I will go with the question as it is. So, which agile processes have I used and which ones do I find most effective? Well, processes is a funny one because you create your process. Now, if we look at Scrum, it's there to help you create your process. It's a framework. In fact, very often, processes are contextual. You have to build it to solve the problem that you have, taking things from all over the place. So instead of what processes work for me, because I'll be honest, the ones that have worked for me are the ones that we've been allowed to create and evolve as we've learned. Which are the frameworks that have allowed us to get there? So which frameworks work for me? It'll be no surprise, Scrum is on the list. In fact, it's one of probably the two key ones that I use today. Scrum it's a framework to help you work out how to build your product, how to solve the complex problems you encounter in your work. It's not a process in and of itself. All it's saying is these are the minimum steps you need to take to solve that problem, to build that product. Okay? You need to start with some type of planning. Okay? Work out what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, and how you're going to do it. Work it out yourself, the detail. Okay? Every day come together. Have a look at where you are, where you're aiming for. Make any course corrections. At the end of every cycle, sit down with the people who care about the problem you're solving, the product you're building, and talk about it. Get feedback on where you are and where you're going next. And then as a team, have honest conversations with yourself about how things are going and how they could be better. It's a very simple framework. And that is the power, and that is why it's absolutely the first thing on my list. When I'm approaching a new team and we're having this conversation, Scrum's going to be in my mind. I'm not going to turn up and say you have to do Scrum. That doesn't help. But actually it doesn't work. What I'm going to be doing is opening up a discussion about really the elements of Scrum. We probably need to do some planning. We need to check in every day. We need to review the product. We need to get some feedback on our process as well. Let's repeat that cycle, maybe every 2 weeks or so. Let's call it a sprint. Oh wait, we're doing Scrum. And that's actually why it is it is the most adopted Agile approach. It's simple, it's easy, it's flexible. It does not impose context on you. You have to add all of that. Okay? It doesn't know what the product is you're trying to build, and it tries to stay neutral of that as best it can. So Scrum is absolutely where I start. Okay? However, Kanban, and there's the Kanban method out there as well, but I'm talking about good, old-fashioned, boring Kanban, making things visible, aiming for flowing work, stuff like that. Okay? That's in my mind as well, because sometimes you look at it and you think, you know what? We're not going to be able to talk about 2 weeks' work or 3 weeks' work or even a week's worth of work here. It's too chaotic, too responsive an environment. So what we need to do is create structures that allow us to respond even faster than Scrum does. Okay? While not sacrificing too much to achieve it. And Kanban is a brilliant way of starting it. In fact, many teams that I work with that reach levels of maturity do a mix of both, often called Scrumban. They will drop sprint planning, but they will have a daily Scrum. They'll probably call it a stand-up, let's be honest. They'll do a sprint review, they'll do a retrospective. But in the meantime, what they're doing is constantly working together to reorder that backlog so the most important thing is at the top. So when team members become available, they can easily pull it off, have a conversation with the customer, with the problem over, whoever, to understand it and start work. So there's very little stoppage time. There's very little downtime waiting for things to happen. For me, those two are the key frameworks for approaching problems in the Agile world today. There will be better ones that come along. The only other things you've got to consider is when you're working at scale, when you've got multiple teams working on a single problem. I will always open up with a simple statement. Don't do it. If at all possible, don't have many teams working on a single problem. Okay? It's hard. And there's no way of getting away from it being hard. We can't mystically wave a wand. We can't bring in a framework that will make it easy. We're talking about scaling thinking. So we've got to have communication. There's overheads that come with that. There's going to be misinterpretations, misalignments. Okay? It's just human nature. It's the nature of communication is it's not perfect. So if you can avoid it, don't do it. You're better off looking at those foundational pieces and improving there. Can we get more work through a given team? And often the answer is yes. There are cases where you're going to have to scale. There is. Okay? There are products out there where there is no hope that you're going to get a 2-pizza team's worth of knowledge able to cover the problem space. You just can't do it. Some of these things are huge problems and you're going to need lots of teams. Okay? Where I start with those ones, the thing that I found most effective is effectively large-scale Scrum, the LESS framework. Unsurprisingly, built on Scrum. It's right there in the name. But because there's some stuff that has to happen at scale, we have to make sure that people are aligned, that they're talking, that they're solving problems together. It adds a few extra bits to help with that. It's trying to be, like Scrum, as minimal as possible. It's trying to not tell you how to do your job. What it's doing is creating a structure in which you can work out how to do your job, and LESS's role in all of this is really helping you keep that alignment, helping you keep transparency, visibility of the problem and how things are going, so that collectively, as a bigger unit, a scaled environment, a scaled team, you can adapt, you can flex as you learn new things. So outside of that, there are many great frameworks out there in the Agile world. I've come from an extreme programming background. That's brilliant, but I don't use it because I don't work with software that often anymore. If you do, I wholeheartedly recommend you go read up on it, give it a go. Okay. But I will invariably start with Scrum, Kanban. I'll be honest, the software in me still wants to do a bit of XP now and again, but nobody will let me do that, quite rightly. Okay, and when we're moving to scale, I'm going to be looking at Kanban still and the LESS framework. If you've got to this point in the video, I hope you've enjoyed it. If so, a like would be appreciated. If you want to hear more from me, more answers to questions that maybe you've got in the Agile world, please subscribe to the channel. And if you've got a question that you really want answered, drop it in the comments. I promise we'll get around to it. Thank you.